Hello, everyone. Welcome to our episode of It's Me, Not You. I am joined by my fabulous co-host. Hello, Melissa.
Hello.
Hello, Jake.
Hey there.
Hey. So today we're going to be talking about toxic positivity. It is a topic that is near and dear to all three of our hearts, and I'm going to start with Melissa. Melissa, when you hear the term toxic positivity, what comes to mind for you?
Well, the first thing is that person at 8 o'clock in the morning that's super hyper and super caffeinated and like, hi, good morning. And I'm not a morning person. I'm like, oh, please, not yet. I hate that really early in the morning at work. Takes me a while to get going. And I don't blame them because they're having a great, happy morning. But for me, it's like, ooh, tone it down. So, no, but for me, toxic positivity is not allowing yourself to be in the real world with your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
We all go through stuff and then having people say, aren't you supposed to be a light worker? You're not supposed to feel like that. Guess what? I have all ranges of emotions just like everyone else. I just try to spend a lot less time in the emotions
Mm-hmm.
that aren't as positive.
Mm-hmm. So for you, Jake, what comes to mind for you when you hear that term toxic positivity?
I feel like for me, like whenever I think about toxic positivity, it always brings me kind of back to, reading the, manifestation books or the law of attraction books. And they would always kind of have that same like niche statement of, all of your thoughts create your reality,
Mm,
and, be mindful of all of your thoughts or all of your words that you use. And I can appreciate the sentiment on one hand, but I mean, just coming from my own personal perspective of when I was reading a lot of this material, I was a very angsty and, kind of just like dealing with my own mental health things as a teenager, when I was kind of absorbing all of this information. And it always kind of felt just incredibly restrictive,
mhm,
restrictive and like almost like militant in a sense of like where it was like you need to be extremely positive and you need to frame all of your words and all of your thoughts perfectly, or you're just going to continue to have an experience that maybe you're not looking to keep having. And I also think that there's like a big conversation too in terms of like, okay, let's say like I'm trying to manifest a new job or a new house, but if I am just in an economic status that just does not liken itself to me having a new house or finding a new apartment overnight, or god forbid anybody that's listening that is homeless, if I were to
yeah,
tell them, law of attraction, babe, it's what you put out into
Right.
the universe. It really leaves no, it doesn't leave wiggle room for just being a human being having a human experience,
mhm,
so I think that in several ways, like I understand that it's well intentioned, but I think at the same time it can be incredibly damaging to not
yeah,
have a little, blurb to preface like, listen, within your means, pay
Right.
attention to your thoughts and pay attention to your words, because again, even on the rabbit hole of mental health, I mean, a lot of different forms of mental health deal with things like intrusive thoughts, or that inner saboteur that kind of speaks up, where it's not necessarily your voice, but it is a voice that
mhm,
might sound daunting or critical,
yeah,
or doubt you on your path or doubt the decisions that you make. But that doesn't mean that you are manifesting, your doom or your downfall. Um, so I mean, there's lots to be said about it, but those are kind of my chief highlights when I hear toxic positivity. It's just like, oh,
I like looking up this definition and it says, what is toxic positivity? And it says the pressure to only display positive emotion, suppressing any negative emotions, feelings, reactions, or experiences. It invalidates the human experience and can lead to trauma, isolation, and unhealthy coping mechanisms. And I also like the signs of toxic positivity, brushing off problems rather than facing them, hiding your true feelings behind feel good quotes that seem socially acceptable, minimizing other people's feelings because they make you uncomfortable, and shaming other people for when they don't have a positive attitude. And I do feel that there is a lot, especially in the spiritual community, you always have to be positive. You always have to be in the light. You always have to be above everything. And it's like, no, I am a soul having a human experience. And with that human experience, I'm going to have some emotions that are deemed societally, unacceptable.
mm,
Shame, rage, depression, despair. For
Jealousy,
me,
insecurity, all of it.
jealousy, envy, all of it. And it's like, no, I mean, I feel like part of our experience here is to learn from those lessons of maybe I have jealousy, maybe I have insecurity that comes up, and I'm allowed to have those emotions and those feelings. But it's like, how do I kind of move forward, acknowledging these and being okay with, it's going to pop up every now and again, and it's okay. We can't always be high vibe, high, I'm in the rainbows and I'm playing with the unicorns and the angels. No, sometimes, like Jake, you talk about your inner goblin, your goblin demon, that negative voice inside of you that
Mhm.
chirps up and kind of knocks you off a little bit. It's like, no, we got to acknowledge our inner goblin, acknowledge these feelings, and be okay with being human and also displaying them. Because I don't know about for you guys, but I do see sometimes spiritual people that are uncomfortable with really expressing how they're truly feeling about something. It's like, no, I think that's fucked up and bullshit. And they're like,
Right.
everything's okay. You'll be okay. Anything else you
Which
guys want
like
to go ahead, Jake?
yeah, I just listen, I just think it's silly, I will say. But from one energy healer to another, I know that all of us can appreciate the power of sitting in an emotion that you're having.
Yes.
Anger, for example, is
Mm,
one that we are always kind of turning a head to and always not wanting
yes.
to look into the face. But in my personal practice for myself in my solitary work and even working with clients during energy healing, letting them have a space where they can facilitate their anger,
Mm,
in that space, you letting themselves vocalize what that is, or finding in their body where they store all of their anger, where they're
mhm,
displacing it, can be so incredibly healing. And for people who have never allowed themselves to be portrayed, to be expressive in their anger, they're very tight, stiff, and let me just tell you, it lives in your body so deeply. The deep muscle cramps, the stiffness, the posture
mhm.
that it gives you, it really does energetically and physically kind of cripple you. You can become very arthritic when you keep these kinds of emotions tucked to the side, or
Yeah.
when we put them in the lens of shame.
Yeah.
Because I think that that's a very easy kind of category to take when we're talking about positivity and toxic positivity. It's very easy to then in turn be like, okay, if I can only be positive, then I must shame and displace the negative, air
Aspect of
quote,
me.
negative
Yeah.
emotions, because newsflash, everybody, there are no negative emotions. They're all beautiful and they're all raw and they're very important to our human experience. um and to be out of touch with things like anger, or to be out of touch with things like grief, sadness, all of those,
Mm,
I mean, I definitely think that it, number one, will definitely dull emotional empathy at the same time, because if I'm outwardly rebuking sadness, grief, shame, guilt, all of those things, then how do I hold space for somebody that's having that experience?
yeah.
How do I relate to them? How do I find ground level with them?
You bring up so many good points. And the one thing I do want to touch on is how you're talking about as energy healers. All three of us are energy healers. And we have been taught that thoughts, emotion, traumas, that those moments get embedded into your cellular tissue. And I'm
Mhm,
going down another path here. It's also limiting beliefs and like
mhm,
kind of the thoughts that run around in our mind. And if we continue to shove those down, that I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy of love, and look at those as like, like you said, there's no negative emotions, where it's okay to feel these things. And maybe as a child I felt neglected or abandoned and I felt alone and isolated. It's okay to allow those feelings to come up, and then you acknowledge them, and that's like one way to let go of limiting beliefs. But like you're saying, that gets embedded in your cellular tissue, and you're going to have maybe issues with your heart. Maybe you felt like loneliness and extreme loneliness and whatnot. That might percolate and come up as actual heart issues. But I
mhm,
do feel like our body is very in tune with our everything that's going on, and sometimes it needs to make louder signs and singles, and it's like, hey, 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 like like, let's say feeling uncomfortable might come up as a skin rash. Like
mhm.
it's fun. It's fascinating how, yes, our thoughts create our reality. I think there's my dog saying hello. Maggie said hello. It's like, it's interesting, but I am uncomfortable with the extreme versions of that your thoughts create your reality, and the supercharge, law of attraction. And there's really negative, uncomfortable things that happen to people, and to put a band-aid on it and say, well, Rachel, that happened to you because you thought it into your reality. Come on.
And I don't think it's positivity that people should be focused on as much as it is what is healthy. Like, being in tune with your anger doesn't mean go out and have road rage. It doesn't mean call people and tell people off and stay away from Rachel driving. No,
anyone watch Beef?
It just means doing it and honoring it in a way that is healthy.
Absolutely.
For yourself, and really coming to the root of what is that emotion and where is it coming from. Like, if you're angry at what someone did, is it really what they did, or is it a feeling that you've had within you for a long time? I mean, we're heading into a new Pluto season with Aquarius, so now we don't have a choice. We're in eclipse season. We have moon energy, Mercury retrogrades all coming up, so everyone is really going to be forced to deal with their shadow sides, whether they want to or not. And the shadow side is just the part of ourselves that we don't want to look at, the parts that we don't want to dig into, which is the other side of what we consider to be positive.
And there is a difference between toxic positivity and hope and validation.
Absolutely.
So you can be hopeful, you can be optimistic, you can have affirmations, but if I'm telling Jake, always have to be positive, he's gonna punch me, or he won't, but he might think it, or never give up, turn that frown upside down.
No one wants to hear that.
How many times have you been told?
Or what, even like my least favorite one too is I don't know, whenever you express like something that maybe was frustrating, or you're just like having a venting moment, and then somebody says, oh, don't think like that.
Oh,
right.
Or invalidating your experience. I mean, yes. I know, like, Jake gives wonderful advice, and I was talking to Jake one time, and I was apologizing, and he's like, don't apologize, this is your experience, this is how you felt in this moment, and you're allowed to have space for how you felt. That's okay. That's your true emotions, that's your true feelings. How am I going to kind of get over that situation if I don't acknowledge this is how I felt in that moment? Like, but never give up, Rachel, just get over it. I'd be like, okay, that's not helpful.
Right.
I mean, I think that there's like a really beautiful lesson to be learned from. I did a lot of work with the sun card. I remember like when I was learning the tarot for the first place, and the sun is always universally talked about as a very positive card, thinking about optimism, or how we frame our thoughts and how we frame our game plan around a certain goal, maybe. But if you think about it, plants can get too much sun, and then they could wither, and then they dry up and recede back into the ground. There is such thing as just too much light. And I think it's, again, like just kind of trying to desegregate the light and the shadow side. We are ourself, and they do have to be integrated. They do have to be a culmination. We're humans.
It's
just
balance.
A gentle reminder.
And I think, like, there are, I mean, we read about all the light workers, and in the past couple of years, I've been reading about dark workers, and maybe there may be some negative connotation with that. I'm not too familiar with what work they do, but what I do feel that they do kind of work with the shadow side, and with the uncomfortable sides of ourselves that we don't like to admit, and the things that, but this is who I am as a person. Maybe when I was younger, I treated somebody like a piece of crap, and that's something I need to acknowledge and maybe get amends for and apologize and whatnot. But that's an aspect of myself that I need to integrate with the light side of myself. And I think, as a spiritual person, what I feel, my personal opinion is, we need to achieve a balance. I can't always be up in, the 7th dimension, the 12th dimension, and high vibing and doing all this. I also need to reconnect back with Mother Earth and bring everything back down into this physical reality. And that comes in with, I got to play with some emotions inside of myself that I'm not being told, don't give up. It's more like, hey, this happened. Well, why don't we work through it? Maybe I need to learn some coping mechanisms. Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point too, because I know that there's a really popular discussion talking about, as far as kind of like somatic healing, meaning like in the body, finding the emotions and allowing that to express. because emotions are meant to be felt and expressed, not over intellectualized, because that is
Yes.
a very real thing. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners will understand what I say, when I mean when I say this, especially for our friends that deal with things like anxiety, depression, OCD, all of these things.
Mhm.
Especially when people who have been going to therapy or have been doing self-help on them, I think that it's very easy for us to intellectualize our emotions and say, okay, this is where it's coming from. That's why I might be feeling that way. I understand why I'm having that reaction, but then I don't have that space to have the emotion.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden we kind of are computer processing our emotions instead of allowing them to be grounded in the body, expressed in a healthy way, whether that's exercise, dance, or a healthy conversation about, why I'm feeling this way and how
Mhm.
maybe I can, correct this, in whatever lens that's coming up for you. But there is such thing as intellectualizing your emotions and not leaving room to be felt. Again, emote your emotions, feel them. And I know that a lot of people, it's a hard thing to remember how to
Yeah.
feel your emotions and allow them to be expressed like that. I do a lot of work with that similar process.
Yeah.
It's a work in process, and it's something that you have to remember how to
Mhm.
do.
It is.
But it is so incredibly liberating, though,
And
Absolutely.
I
when
think
you
when you're talking about the intellectual part too, we tend to, well, some may tend to research or look it up, like, why am I feeling this way? What do I do? But what knows how to do it best is your body. Just like you're saying, like, where is this in my body? Okay, I'm angry, I'm upset, I have anxiety. Where is my anxiety?
Mhm.
And then wherever that is, that's where you work on letting it go. It doesn't always have to have a name. You don't always have to have a purpose for it. It could just be little dust fragments of things that have happened throughout your life, and now it's too much and you just don't know what to do with it. So just let it go from that place where it's living or where it is kind of festering inside of you, and then fill that with something that's good for yourself, right after. So it's like you said, if it's your heart, maybe it's just watching, I don't know, Marley and Me or some kind of movie that'll make you cry and you get it over on, and then you don't have to deal with, ooh, I cried. You can blame it on the movie, but at least
Yeah.
you dealt with getting it out of you.
And I
Mhm.
think another thing is that not every single person is going to deal with their emotions. It's not a cookie cutter method.
Mm-mm.
Like, you said earlier, Jake, about, grief. And I feel like we as a society, especially in a work culture, we don't give people space to grieve. And it's almost like employees or employers almost wear it like a badge of honor. Well, I didn't take a day off when my mom died. Like I'm okay. And I move forward and it's no big deal. I mean, I've seen this in the
Yeah.
workplace and you're like, there's no space for people to grieve and really truly feel out their emotions. And I think that we have minimalized our feelings as a society a lot and like really taught people shove it in, kind of like be a robot, just continue to hustle and grind, hustle and grind, hustle and grind. And that's where you see people burning out and having breakdowns because your body eventually will be like, all right, girl, we're done.
Yeah.
Like we're done. I mean, you will hit up against that wall. But I think, like Melissa was saying, to feel into your body. But it's interesting because you can have referred pain and that you may be getting a headache, but really the pain's going on your ankle. So I would be curious to see if any of our listeners, they're like, I have this pain and I tuned into it, but really it was up here. I'd be curious to see if that happens for anyone.
Mhm.
I think that'd be interesting. Anything that you guys else want to add in about toxic positivity? And maybe some ways to, if you're encountering it, allowing yourself space, yes, for hope and optimism, but also allowing these emotions to kind of come up. How about for you, Melissa?
It's a personal journey. Nobody can tell you or kind of give you the roadmap, if you will, for how you're supposed to get through it. You need to do what's right for you. There's no timeline for emotions. There's no timeline for grief. It's however you need to process it, and think about kind of how you want to receive and then also how you want to give. When you tell somebody, oh, you'll get through it, nobody wants to hear that. They want to hear, you know what, I will sit with you. I will sit for you and I will hold space for you while you get through whatever it is you need to go through. And I'm here, not telling your story over their story or, oh my gosh, it's been a year. Like, are you seriously not over this yet? you know, that kind of stuff really isn't, it's not helpful.
When you're
Mhm.
saying that, I think about people that have had partners that maybe cheated on them. And like, but they're, you know, maybe their partner had an affair and whatnot. And they're like, oh, just get over it. It's no big
Right,
deal.
it's not
Because
that
they
big a
chose to
deal.
stay with the partner or whatnot.
Right.
Just get over it. It was fine. Get over it.
Mhm.
Like, no, I don't trust him because he's a fucking asshole and he violated my trust. But I know, like, no. And then your partner gaslights you, like, it's fine. Sorry, whole nother topic. Jake, anything else?
Yeah, I always just like to say in my like client work is that like think about like all of these experiences, whether that's like a traumatic experience that you had when you were younger, or a loss that you went through, or an incredibly stressful time, or a period of anxiety. I always think about those things as okay, we do a level of healing work at that time, and then later on down the road we become different versions of ourselves. We learn new information and we come to new points of view. And so I often find myself looking back at previous chapters and previous experiences and looking at it from a different perspective, and then feeling like I'm healing in an additional way that I couldn't have at that time, because you couldn't
Mhm.
have told 20-year-old me that, oh, this was really, let me really break it down. This is why this was happening. And this is what we walked away with. I couldn't have heard that kind of answer that I can give myself at 25 today. You know what I mean? So I always tell people, we're always changing and evolving. So don't be afraid to go back to past experiences,
Mhm.
childhood, 3 years ago, all these things. Allow yourself to keep an open door policy with your emotions and your
Mhm.
experiences. Allow yourself to revisit that. Just because you've had a conversation or a dialogue, especially let's talk about partners. If you have something like, a cheating situation in a relationship, or even just an experience where you felt betrayed, if you're feeling like that's coming back up again for you and you want to discuss that because you're having this experience, a visceral reaction to this revisiting moment, then open that dialogue.
Yeah.
I would definitely say I would really encourage our listeners to get back into the habit. Try pushing yourself to say something about how you're feeling a little bit more often. Like
Mhm.
if you're stressed out, try just kind of portraying that to the people around you, of saying, you know what, I'm a little stressed today, so I'm going to take some time for myself. I'm going to, I'll be at home. I'm going to go, open up a good book and just kind of simmer down with that.
Yeah.
Or, you know what, I'm feeling a little bit down and out, so I would really appreciate, an extra person to keep me company.
Yeah.
How about let's maybe go get coffee. Allow yourself to, if you have a certain emotion that you're experiencing, loneliness, happiness, or if you're really happy for that matter, if you're really happy about something and you want to share that joy, say it out loud. Even
Yeah.
if you're not somebody that particularly shares that often, get into the habit of just speaking how you're feeling a little bit more.
Yeah.
It's not easy, and not everybody is just like so gung-ho and great about doing so, but I find personally that it's incredibly helpful, little by little baby steps,
Yeah.
when you just speak those types of things out loud. It helps you not internalize them as much.
And I think to add, just be realistic with how you feel. And also maybe being okay with calling out the person that is making you feel uncomfortable with their toxic positivity. Like,
Even if
I'm
it's
not
yourself.
resonating with this, even if it's with yourself, you
Yeah.
know? Um,
And listen, there's no problem saying, you know what, that doesn't necessarily resonate with me, but
yeah,
I
you can be
appreciate it.
diplomatic and,
Mhm.
maybe
Absolutely.
not. Maybe not, Hey. And also, like you said, put your feelings into words. Like maybe you are feeling overwhelmed or you're feeling stressed, and and I will say that's something that I've been working with more. I sometimes I can feel really overwhelmed,
Mm.
and I feel like I'm gonna burst, and then but I have been trying to put that more into words. Like I know I will say I'm feeling very sensitive at the moment, and I'm just gonna need a minute, like and then I can kind of reassess and re-engage. So, but I just want to thank everyone for listening to It's Me Not You, and we'll see you all soon. Bye.
See you
Bye.
soon.